we look outside in the Tampa area, Elisa, and they've got those warnings in place, just bracing for the storm's impact.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, we're looking at these winds upwards of 100 miles per hour as it nears that Florida coastline. I've got some of these spaghettis drawn. You can see we've got good consensus, like she was showing. Everyone pretty much agrees it's between Tampa and Fort Myers. There's that little turn up towards the Carolinas. And then look what happens as we get towards the Charlotte area. We kind of split with some western tracks and some eastern tracks. If we get that western track, that means a bigger tornado threat for us. We'll have more circulation in the Charlotte area. If we get that eastern track here, then that's more of a coastal impact, more coastal flooding, storm surge, and erosion. There are those storm surge watches and tropical storm watches near Hilton Head. Along the Carolinas, we're really looking at some gusty winds up to 40 miles per hour, heavy rain up to 5 inches maybe in spots, and that could lead to some flooding, maybe some landslides up in the higher elevations that we'll have to watch out for. That tornado threat, again, is what could really teeter depending on the track of this system. Guys.
Here, not only down in Florida where they're getting ready for Ian, but across the Carolinas and how much of that rain everyone can see.
Yeah, Tara, I mean, we're looking at getting some of whatever's left, tropical storm remnant by Friday here in the Carolinas. But look at this satellite image. You can just see how deep and big that eye is, just showing its strength, even some lightning showing up on satellite as we still have this Category 3 hurricane here. Again, as it works its way up the Florida peninsula, we will find it make that landfall somewhere between Tampa and Fort Myers. Then here comes that turn. But as it gets towards North Carolina, we are looking at a little bit of a split in, which way will it go? If it goes to the west, that puts us in a greater tornado threat. We'll have more of that circulation to tap into. If it goes to the east, that's more of a coastal threat, coastal erosion, coastal flooding. So rain developing in the Carolinas by Friday. Heavy rain leads to flooding and landslides in the higher elevations. Remember, we have some terrain here. Gusty winds near 40 miles per hour. Make sure you take in and tie down any loose objects before the weekend comes. And we are continuing to monitor that tornado threat as we get towards the weekend.
Meteorologist Elisa Raffa right now. We've seen some changes shifting west, shifting to the east at times, and that will determine what we get here across the Carolinas too.
Yeah, that track is so important in determining exact rainfall amounts and exact tornado ingredients. You could see just the breadth of the heavy rain that's moving into South Florida all day today, that major Category 3 storm. Because we have that really decent consensus, right? The Tampa-Fort Myers area within the next 24, 48 hours. But look what happens as it moves north. These little spaghetti plots start to separate a little bit. If it's got a western track, that's a greater tornado threat for us. We have more of those tornado ingredients in play in Charlotte. If it's an eastern track, we're talking about more coastal flooding, more coastal erosion. So something that we'll have to watch out for. But either way, we're expecting some gusty winds up to 40 miles per hour, some heavy rain in spots up to 4 inches of rain. That could cause problems with power lines and trees, so be prepared for at least a few power outages. Make sure you get your batteries before we head into the weekend. Yeah, like you mentioned, we're looking at that second landfall. You can see that yellow is the shield of tropical storm force winds that can stretch up towards Myrtle Beach. We have, for that concern, tropical storm warnings in effect in that red there color, gust over 40 miles per hour, storm surge warning as well, because we could find that storm surge around Hilton Head, Savannah area, get up to 3 to 6 feet along the coast. That storm surge, remember, is the push of the ocean water with those intense winds and the turning storm. Like Tyra mentioned, rain also a big part of the story along the coast. We could be looking at 5, 6, 7 inch totals as you really get that push of all of that moisture coming in to the coast. So we'll be busy here the next couple of days. Again, our local impacts, mainly Friday and Saturday. It's like you mentioned, we're looking at it ejecting out of Florida a little bit and then could make a second landfall along the Georgia Carolina coast there. Tropical storm and storm surge warnings are in effect as we go through the weekend here. And again, that storm surge near Hilton Head down towards Savannah could be up to 3 to 6 feet in spots. Remember, that storm surge is the push of ocean water from those hurricane force and tropical storm force winds and the turn of the storm. Plus, we get rain from the sky too, not just from the ocean. So we do have a high-end threat for flooding. Some totals along the coast there could be about 5 to 7 inches. Now, I want to take you up into the sky. Hurricane hunters, they go into these storms routinely to check out and get the observations, right? That's how we know it has 150 mile per hour winds. But look at this. This video came from Nick Underwood, a hurricane hunter. He has been in so many hurricanes that, remember that year we had 30 storms? And he said this was the worst worst flight that he's ever had. Everything just being jostled around, just how severe those conditions were for them up there in the Hurricane Hunter plane as they flew through the eye of Ian today. So just really dramatic video that they've been posting today on Twitter as they try to do that service for us and get us some of that video and the observations of Ian. Our impacts here locally start again Friday and Saturday, as Tara mentioned, so make sure you stay weather aware.
Now, all this talk about wind and heavy rain, obviously that's going to lead to some issues at home and on the roads. Let's head on over to meteorologist Elisa Raffa right now for a little more on those impacts.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at very elevated, severe impacts from the flooding and the high winds when you're talking about those gusts near 60 miles per hour and the rain totals possibly nearing 5 inches. Here's a look at the power outage risk. You could see it really blossom near that Myrtle Beach area where we could get that landfall, but the power outage risk extends towards Charlotte as those winds continue to kick as that tropical storm will move inland. So we do have a very high risk of power outages. I mean, just plain and simple. We're going to have some of them around tomorrow because of the trees, the power lines, heavy rain up to 6 inches, and those gusts nearing 55 miles per hour. So do you have a flashlight? Do you have batteries for that flashlight? Maybe some snacks. Make sure you charge your phone tonight. Just little things to keep in mind as we go through the day tomorrow. You got Halloween decorations outside. Take them in, tie them down. You'll want to do that as we go through the night tonight. Be careful if you do have to drive tomorrow. It's going to be very dangerous next to trucks, and watch out for any downed trees and power lines. Flooding also a concern. Make sure you never drive through standing water. Not only is it tough to see how deep it is, it's also filled with a lot of bacteria too, so you don't want to be in that. Remember, it only takes 6 inches of water to sweep you and your car. Get to higher ground in flash flooding. So as we go through the day tomorrow, obviously it's going to be a pretty active day. Make sure you stay prepared with us. QCnews.com, that Pinpoint Weather app. Make sure you've got the NOAA weather radio ready to go as well in case we get that isolated tornado warning. The emergency alerts will also be helpful. Turn off that do not disturb. Annie.
All right, Elisa, some great reminders.
Lisa, you're talking about those coastal Carolina impacts.
Yeah, we're looking at a second U.S. landfall with tropical storm force winds very likely pretty much along the South Carolina coast there where hurricane warnings are in effect. Notice that we do take the decent likelihood of some tropical storm force winds all the way up into Charlotte, which is why that warning that Tara was just showing you is in effect. So there's the tropical storm warning. Here's that hurricane warning in effect along the South Carolina coast. Storm surge warnings in effect there too, because we could still see some storm surge numbers get up to 3 to 6 feet in spots. Charleston has problems with flooding on a regular rainy day, so again concerned about that. But through Seabrook down towards Hilton Head, that's where we have that storm surge concern. Then this big red area is not water from the ocean, it's water from the sky. That flooding threat from the heavy rain, where we could find these rain totals nearing 5 inches for a lot of the state. So again, the impact is going to get well inland even after that landfall. You can see some of the heavy rain totals here up to about 4 or 5 inches around our area. And then if you look at the coast, some of those deep yellows, that's where you can find some of these totals that get a little bit closer to 5, 6, 7 inches of rain. So second landfall in South Carolina by Friday morning. The brunt of our rain and wind is going to be in the afternoon and evening tomorrow. Heavy rain leads to flooding and landslides in the higher elevations. Keep that in mind. Damaging wind gusts near 55, 60 miles per hour. And again, that's without the tornado threat. The tornado threat is on the lower side. That's healthier to our east and southeast, just not zero, something that we'll need to monitor as we go through the day today. So make sure you take in, tie down any loose objects that you've got outside and turn those emergency alerts on so you can get all of them as we go through the day tomorrow. Guys.
Just Elisa Raffa with more on those impacts.
Yeah, I mean, heavy rain, gusty winds as we go through the day today. We are looking at some pretty significant impacts from that. Power outage is one of them. You can see where the power outage map really flourishes around near Myrtle Beach, where we might get that landfall, and then it stretches up to the Carolinas as we are expecting some tropical storm force winds possible. So we are looking at least a few scattered power outages going into tomorrow. Decent shot. Someone's in the dark tomorrow because of the heavy rain and the extreme wind. Power lines and trees are most at at risk. So make sure you've got a flashlight. Do you have batteries for that flashlight? Do you have the snacks that you like, or maybe some board games that you can play if you're stuck at home without the TV and the iPad? So just things to keep in mind as we go through the day tomorrow. Do you have any Halloween decorations outside? Any little plants or things that might go flying? They will tomorrow. Take them in, tie them down. Use caution if you do have to go out driving next to trucks, and remember, down trees and power lines are unsafe. So when it comes to the flooding, the rain end of it, remember to turn around, don't drown. You don't know what's in the waters. Could be live power lines, could be bacteria. You just don't want to be in that, and it doesn't take much to really flood, and you want to get to higher ground. So obviously pretty busy day here in the Weather Center tomorrow, so get that Pinpoint weather app downloaded on your phone and make sure you turn on the emergency alerts.
All that heavy rain through the afternoon and evening. Now let's talk about the coastal impacts along our Carolina beaches. Meteorologist Elisa Raffa talks about that.
Yeah, we're looking at a Category 1 landfall going into tomorrow morning. You can see the deep purples and reds telling us that tropical storm force winds are pretty much a guarantee from Wilmington down to Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head Island. You can see Charlotte is included in that decent chance for tropical storm force winds, and that's why we have those warnings in effect. Along the coast from Myrtle Beach down towards Hilton Head, it's a hurricane warning and storm surge warning there. Tropical storm warnings take you up into Charlotte. Storm surge, I mean, Charleston has a really bad habit of flooding even in regular rain. We're looking at 3 to 6 feet of storm surge, if not a little bit more than that, from Charleston down towards Seabrook, Hilton Head, and even into Savannah. Then we've got to talk about water from the sky, that heavy rain. You see that big red. That is a high risk of flooding from flash flooding from those downpours, and that takes over from the coast all the way up through the Piedmont into our area. Locally, could be seeing some totals up to about 4 inches in spots. We can see the bright yellows along the coast. Some of those totals could get closer to 6 or 7 inches as that storm just brings all of that moisture inland. So second landfall in the U.S. is South Carolina tomorrow morning. Brunt of the rain and wind in the afternoon and evening for us. Heavy rain leads to flooding and landslides, damaging wind gusts near 55, 60 miles per hour through the day tomorrow. Overall, our tornado threat is low. It's just not zero. It is the healthiest to the east and southeast. So just make sure those weather alerts are on all day tomorrow. We'll be here keeping you updated.
Elisa,